Hello everybody, hope everybody's enjoying their summer or winter, depending on which hemisphere of the world you live in or live on. For the last few weeks it's been really quite hot here in southern British Columbia, and to be honest with you, I don't personally find hot sunny weather very conducive to great photography. Great time to get out and hike and enjoy the outdoors. It's a good time to go in the mountains actually, because it's quite a bit cooler out there. Or where I am right now on the west coast of Vancouver Island, it's actually quite a bit cooler than the rest of the province. We're about 10 degrees cooler here, and we also get a lot of coastal fog. So to get away from the heat, as my last video in Ucluelet, I've come up to the North Island, not far from a little town or hamlet called Port Hardy. And if you go right to the very northwest tip of Vancouver Island, that's called Cape Scott. And I'm just below there to a more popular area called San Joseph Bay. Now, I've got to be honest with you, I came here last week and with a friend of mine, and we had a really nice time. I got some pretty decent drone footage, but I only took like 1 or 2 shots. I just couldn't find a good composition. When we hiked in, it was really sunny, and then the coastal fog moved in, but it wasn't really fog, it was just low clouds, so the light was very flat. So it kind of went from one extreme to the other. So I've come back to try and redeem myself. Now it's a little bit of a drive. Like, we have a place in a little town called Parksville, which is kind of mid-island. So Port Hardy and the trailhead to Cape Scott takes about 6 hours to get here. There's the roads aren't generally that busy. The last 60 or 70 kilometers is up logging road, which can be a little dicey. This time of year it's very dusty, and of course there's a lot of logging trucks on the road, so you got to be wary of those logging trucks because they don't stop for anybody. Wow, look at this. We're really fogged in here. Oh, it's quite a bit cooler. It's actually really nice. It was just so blazing hot and sweaty driving up here, up island, and now we're just surrounded by fog and beach. Lots of sand. I can just see the trees behind me here. So I'm going to head out to where I camped before, which is pretty close to these rock formations, pinnacles. And actually this fog could be really good because it could really separate them from the background. That's the problem I've always had with these sea stacks in the past. I've been here twice before, and I had real trouble photographing them because they just kind of blend in with the background. And there's such neat looking formations. So that's the plan. I guess I'll find out as soon as I get there whether they're going to be any good or not. Bears round here. Okay, now this is absolutely fantastic. Now I was hoping that the sun might come out just a little bit, just to give it a bit of directional light, but I mean I can't complain. So as you can see, the pinnacles are really well defined when there's fog and nothing behind them, If it was a clear day like it was last week, then the forest behind just kind of merges in with these pinnacles. But as it stands now, they're well separated, and you can see there's these fantastic little bonsai trees growing on each of these pinnacles, which really gives them a lot of character. They almost look like a little group of people kind of chatting to one another, standing on these pinnacles. Just over here, there's a beautiful tree growing out of the cliff here, but I'm not sure how I can incorporate this into this scene. I might try and do a pano, or just take it as a shot on its own. As you can see, I've got quite a few more clothes on now. When I hiked in, it was baking hot, but now that I'm standing on the beach, there's a breeze, and it's very cool and actually quite damp. My camera gear is getting quite wet. Okay, everybody has a different way of shooting. Obviously, some people like to just shoot, you know, hundreds of images all at once and pick the best ones, and then other people, kind of like me, like to just, you know, work on one or two compositions and kind of inch our way and finesse them. There's no wrong or right way to take a photograph. My background is mostly in large format camera, so of course by using a large format camera I was slowed down considerably, and I still do the same thing with my 35mm camera. So with this scene, there's a few things that I kind of want to go over that are important to me, and as I keep scrutinizing and scrutinizing, I eventually get to the composition that I want. And I'll just show you some of the examples of what I'm looking for as I take images of this scene here. Okay, for this particular scene, what's really important to me are the bonsais, or the trees on top of these pinnacles, and the pinnacles themselves. And because we have fog, you can see that they're very well defined. But I also want to make sure that there's nothing overlapping in the background to confuse the viewer when they're looking at these images. You'll notice that I've tried to compose this in such a way that the trees are well separated from the background, and they have a real definitive shape to each of them, and the pinnacles themselves. There's another part in here that as I keep moving around inch by inch, that's slowly becoming more and more important to me. And it sounds really silly, but this area here where the sand is, you really want, or I want, a passageway or some way that the viewer can walk through this scene. Now, you may notice that this rock here is very close to the pinnacle in the background. And the more and more I look at this, if this rock in the foreground overlaps with that pinnacle, then it kind of blocks the viewer looking at the image, walking down this kind of imaginary pathway of sand through the image. So what I'd like to do next is just compose it, just inch my way over to the left and maybe up a bit, so that we have more of a gap there right here, so that the viewer can walk through. So let's just do that, and then we'll see if that improves the composition or not. Okay, I'm a little precarious here. I have to be careful that I don't knock the camera, but you could probably see what I'm talking about now. So I've moved the camera over to the right and actually down a little bit, and now you should be able to notice that there's actually a path of sand going all the way from one pinnacle to the next, and then there's a gap between the very far rock and this rock in the foreground, and that gives a visual path for the viewer to walk through. You'll also notice now that this tree on this pinnacle in the foreground is well separated from the trees on the side and the fog in the background, so it has a very definitive shape, and there's no confusing what the shape is and what it is. And I think overall this is probably a better composition than the first one I showed you. Whether or not it really has improved it, I don't know. But those are the things that are important to me when I'm actually taking photographs and looking for compositions. And if you combine all of those elements cumulatively, then they all add up to a more refined composition in the end. Right, good morning everybody. Now then, I actually slept in this morning. The fog never really left, and actually it's lifted quite a bit, so it's not quite as good as yesterday. So what I've done, I've decided to come for a little bit of a recce, and I've come up to the second beach here, which is just as spectacular as the first beach. There are a few people around, but not that many, just a couple of people camped along the shoreline here. So since the light is quite flat, I've decided to look for like little close-ups or little vignettes, and I found some great patterns right here. I've seen these before. So what's happening here is a bit of a hillside behind the camera there, and there's somewhat of a stream coming down, and it's kind of spread out over the sand here, and it's created these beautiful patterns that almost look like trees. I've seen photographs of them before, and I've photographed them before myself, but it almost looks like an ancient forest. Now, ideally in this situation I'd use a polarizer, but I actually left my polarizer at the tent. I haven't been doing too well in that realm lately, so I'm gonna have to make do with what I have. It'll be fine. Good morning everybody, second morning at San Josef Bay. Well, the clouds never really lifted. The first day that I was here was probably the best because the clouds came right down. We had that wonderful fog, but now we just have low-lying cloud, and it's been like this ever since that evening. So I haven't taken an awful lot of photographs, but it's been an awesome place to come visit once again, and I'll probably come back and again until I get some really awesome light. It'd be really nice to get some nice sunset light or sunrise light, but I guess that'll have to wait, and it gives me a good excuse to keep coming back. Anyway, I'm going to pack up now and head back to the van, because I have a long drive back. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a little bit out of it, and if you did, please be sure to give me a thumbs up, and if you enjoy the content on my channel, don't forget to subscribe. All right everybody, thanks ever so much, and I'll catch you next time. Right, bye.